All right, hey everybody. Um, Thanks for watching this video on finding your target. This is a fairly new um, idea concept, and this is a new seminar that I just started doing. So hopefully it's really beneficial and helpful for you. It's a concept I've been thinking about for a while, and really want to push a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about in this. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started, hop into everything. I'm going to share my screen, and then we will get started. Try to make it full size for you guys so you can see it. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so this presentation is called Finding Your Target. And tonight we are talking about aiming in the right spot and kind of how to start your process going in the right direction. Real quick, a few things about me, in case you don't already know me, Jason. I coached college volleyball for 9 years, all here in the state of Texas. I was a head and assistant coach, Division I head coach, Division I assistant, Division II assistant. Recruiting was a big part and key to my success as an assistant and as a head coach. It's how I got to know a lot of other college coaches across the country. It's how I kind of got a lot of my, I don't want to say respect, that's not probably the best word, but how I was most known with coaches across the country was just from a lot of recruiting stuff. So when I left college coaching, I started working with club in high school, and I started getting bombarded with all of these questions from parents about recruiting, which was not totally normal. I had just left college coaching. I was Division I head coach. But what I noticed was I felt like a lot of the questions that I was getting asked were really foundational to recruiting and should be knowledge about recruiting. And so I noticed a huge need as far as the education piece and aspect of recruiting on this end. So then I started PRI and have been doing that full time since 2018. So the goal of this seminar is to help you find your target schools. Okay, this is a really important part of the process. We don't spend a ton of time on this, maybe haven't spent a ton of time on this, and it's going to be a big focus for me going forward with the athletes that I help and work with. Creating a manageable list. Okay, I will tell you, you got to have 50 schools on your list. That's a lot, and we're going to break that list down as we get going. But we've got to create a manageable list and a list that makes sense. And the other part here is to help you find your focus, help you focus in on where you want to go to school, where you're going to be a good fit, because that's going to really help streamline the process, the recruiting process. I think for a lot of athletes, if we spend a little bit more time up front doing this. Okay, so it matters where you start. If you've ever tried to get to a specific destination and you don't start in the right place to get where you're going, if you're trying to climb a mountain or get to hike some pass, if you start out the wrong trail, you might not end up where you're trying to get to. Okay, so I think where you start is really important. One of the things that I talk a lot about is scholarships, and I think scholarships are an important foundation aspect for athletes and parents to know on this end. I think it really helps them grasp the recruiting concept as a whole. And so I spent a ton of time talking about it in Recruiting 101. You can go check out that video on my website as well. I'm going to blow through some of the stuff in here so that we kind of have a good core foundation of what we're talking about. Basically, how scholarships break down at Division I. If we assume that all Division I schools are fully funded, which they are not, okay, not all Division I schools are fully funded. You've got 335 Division I schools, 12 scholarships per school. That's like a little over 4,000. I think it's 4,021. Okay, so we say 4,000 just to round it out. That's 4,000 total in all 4 recruiting classes. Okay, so basically we've got 1,000 scholarships in every recruiting class. Okay, in your recruiting class and the recruiting class before you and after you, we've got 1,000 scholarships across all Division I in your recruiting class. Okay, now it's not actually that high. That number is actually smaller than that, but 1,000 is a good round number to kind of give you an idea. Division I has 12 full scholarships max. Okay, and I answered this question the other night at the state tournament, a volleyball state tournament. A parent asked me, "Are all scholarship offers full rides?" And I said, "No." Okay, not even for Division I, right? Division I has 12 full scholarships max. Division I is what we call a head counter sport. So what that means is if I give an athlete $10 or if I give them $10,000, that counts as one. Okay. So in Division I can offer an athlete a non-full ride scholarship. Okay. You can, it just counts as one and you can only have 12. Okay. Division II, 8 full scholarships is their max. But Division II volleyball is what we call a equivalency sport. Okay, so if I offer an athlete, if it costs $50,000 to go to my school, if I offer an athlete $25,000, that counts as 0.5. Okay, where if I offer an athlete in Division I $25,000, it counts as 1. Right, and those 8 scholarships, most Division II schools will have somewhere around 6. Okay, that's fairly normal for Division II school. At Division II, I can spread that money out to 13, 14, 15, 16 student athletes if I want to. Right? But Division I is not all or nothing. It is one of the things that I talked about early on and trying to get people to change their vernacular and make sure we're saying the right things. But if you say Division I is all or nothing scholarship wise, it's not semantically true. It's not technically true. So there's a lot more variables there. Now I'm not going to go and read all this stuff for you. Obviously you can go through and read the numbers. But what I'm trying to, I wrote a blog about playing Power 5. You can go find that on my blog tab on privolleyball.com. You can read that blog. But what I was trying to communicate was how tough really is it to play in the Power 5, okay? And this is a really big concept, or a really good concept that I think a lot of people need to understand how difficult it really is to play in the Power 5 for volleyball. Now, obviously, there are other really fantastic programs out there. I mean, BYU is going to be in Power 5 here in a year or so, whenever they're moving. I think it's a year. They're a top 25 program. That's not Power 5. So they're recruiting a high-level athlete. Creighton is another one of those schools that's a non-Power 5 that recruits and plays at a really high level. So there are schools outside of the Power 5 that are really, really good. I'm not trying to say that Power 5 are always the best programs, but this is where a lot of athletes and families spend a lot of time thinking about is playing in the Power 5. So I put these numbers up here. The amount of athletes that are playing NCAA volleyball, that's Division I, II, or III, compared to high school volleyball athletes. And I show those percentages there, the percentage of Division I. I went through and kind of took a general count of roster size in the Power 5. And the average roster size is about 16. Okay. Math across all the Power 5 schools. I've got a little over 1,000 athletes playing across Power 5. Now remember, we can only have 12 athletes on scholarship, right? So only 75% of those 1,000 athletes are on scholarship. And so we only have 756 athletes on scholarship in the Power 5 across the board. That's all 4 recruiting classes, okay? Power 5s actually make up a fairly small amount of Division I athletes. Just right around 20%, right around 1/5 of Division I athletes are Power 5. And then you have the 2 numbers at the bottom that I want to point out here. Less than 0.25% of high school athletes playing in the Power 5, and 0.17% of high school athletes are on scholarship. That's in the Power 5. I don't have that in there. I probably should say that specifically, but okay. So in the Power 5, again, I want you guys to understand how it looks here, so we can kind of play that out across the board, Division I, Division II. I think it's, if we understand more what's happening at the quote unquote top of volleyball and Power 5, then we can kind of be able to understand a little more what's happening down the road. So in any given grad year, 4 athletes are being recruited by a school. Okay, 3 of those 4 are going to be on scholarship, right? So again, only 75% of a roster is going to be on scholarship, most likely, if we use that 12 scholarships, 16 athletes on the roster. Okay, only about 75%. That means that in any given grad year, okay, so any more athletes grad year, there are 252 total athletes across the entire country that are getting recruited in the Power 5, okay, that are committing, signing, however you want to say that. But there are 252 athletes being recruited in the Power 5, 189 total athletes on scholarship in the Power 5 in any given grad year. So less than 200 athletes across the entire country, okay, are going to be on scholarship in the Power 5. Okay, so hopefully that helps kind of that 1,000 scholarships break down a little bit more. There are 252 other Division I schools across the country besides the Power 5, and 300 Division II schools. Okay, so those numbers at the bottom, that info on the bottom is really to kind of just point out there are other places that athletes can play besides Power 5, and that's kind of a theme that we talk about here throughout. Okay, so why is all this information important? At the start of the pandemic, I was manually sending out some emails through the recruiting system for a club, and this is a system where athletes can go in and like a school and favorite a school, and there 3 different clubs have access to the system. The school that had the college that had the most favorites between 3 clubs was Baylor. They had 79 athletes in 3 clubs that favorited the school. Okay. Why I bring this up is because even if that 79, 80, let's say, those 80 favorites are happening across 4 recruiting classes, okay? Let's say, it might be 5, but let's say it's 4. That's 20 athletes in those 3 clubs that favorited Baylor, okay? And 20 athletes in each grad class that favorited Baylor. Absolutely nothing wrong with favoriting Baylor. Baylor's obviously a great school, and all that. It's in the Big 12, which always helps. But 20 athletes in each grad year favoriting Baylor. Baylor is, remember the numbers that we showed before, they're recruiting probably no more than 4 athletes in that specific grad class, okay? And so chances are also that Baylor's not realistically recruiting any more than maybe 10 to 12 athletes in those 80, okay? So we have so why I think that's important is we have a lot of athletes gravitating to schools where there isn't going to be a whole lot of chance or high probability of them actually playing at that school. Okay, not to say that athletes can't play at Baylor. Sure, call Ryan, call Jason, email them, figure that out. But if there's a huge influx of athletes that want to play at a specific school, and it's just the numbers don't always necessarily add up. Okay, the first round of emails is always the same. Okay, so the blog, this last point here, aim for the middle. This was a blog that I wrote several months ago, and it kind of really started off this whole thought process for me about needing to focus more now. And then what happened with the 2023 class, with them going so quickly kind of through the recruiting process without college coaches being able to watch them play live until really the last second. The recruiting kind of atmosphere right now is happening very quickly once college coaches can contact athletes. Okay, so if we start going in this direction and nothing hits, and we kind of turn back and then we start to kind of refocus, it might be too late on a lot of the schools that we're trying to refocus on because they've already moved on with other athletes. Okay, and that is the idea behind my blog post. But the blog post kind of started all of this kind of thought process for me. And then the other part of it was I was really noticing that as athletes were CCing me on emails that they would send out from the very beginning stages of the process, they're all the same schools. Okay, it's Clemson, it's LSU, it's Texas Tech, it's Baylor. It's all those, excuse me, same kind of schools. And we're not spreading our list out really very much. Okay, our focus is very small and very high, which is fine. But I feel like that with the way recruiting is going, we've got to be more focused a little bit earlier. Okay, so qualifiers. So we're talking about what you are looking for in a school. Okay, that's what I mean by qualifier, not the USAV type qualifiers, but things that you're trying to identify in a college that's going to make you want to go there, right? So as far as your qualifiers that you're trying to figure out, your location is under your control. Okay, your academic major is under your control. What you're choosing to major in, that is in your control. The level that you either want to play at, can play at, or trying to play at, however you want to phrase that, that is under your control. You have the ability to discuss or focus on what you want. I have athletes tell me all the time that they only want to play Division I. That is fine. That is completely under your control. Okay, your desire of scholarship, okay, either amount or time frame, whatever that looks like, that is something that you get to control, that you're looking for. That's a qualifier for you. Okay, school size. I've had athletes tell me that they want to play at a quote unquote big school. Okay, I don't know what a quote unquote big school means exactly. Are we talking about lot size, acre size, student population? I don't necessarily know what that means, but the school size, usually it's student population, what they're implying there. And so just kind of hashing that out a little bit and figure out what that looks like. But that is something that you can control as far as what you are looking for. Okay, college experience, again, whatever that looks like. As far as what you're wanting out of your 4 years of your college experience, that is something that you can control and something that you can kind of point at and say, I want this, I don't want this, right? I want to go to college in a big town. I don't want to go to I don't want to go to a big school in a very small town, right? So totally on your side. Coaching fit, okay? This is something that's really important. This is something I'm going to be talking about later on down the road a little bit, but I think figuring out what type of coach you want to have coach you for 4 years of college is really, really important. And this is something that doesn't always pop up super high on athletes' lists, but it ends up being a big part of why they choose a school. And so I think, and a lot of times you don't know until you get on the phone with them. That's totally fine. But I think coaching fit is a huge part of the process, and we definitely need to keep it high on list. Okay, things that are out of your control. Okay, if you are a 3 rotation right side hitter, okay, and I'm at a school where I run a 5-1, I don't need too many 3 rotation right side hitters, okay, especially if they're a lefty, right? Pigeonhole lefties to the right side and all that kind of fun stuff. But program needs, that's not something that's necessarily out of your, or it's something that's not necessarily in your control. Okay, it's out of your control. You might have a coach at a school that really likes you, you really like them, but they go, hey, we just don't need another athlete in your position, setters, liberos. This kind of happens all the time. Okay, you don't really have control over their interest in you. Okay, you could be really interested in them, but they might not be interested in you. Okay, that's not something you necessarily have control over. The scholarship availability piece, like I said, they might really like you and they just don't have a scholarship, or it doesn't match what you want on that in your control part of the scholarship piece. Okay, they might not have a scholarship for you in that class. They might not have a scholarship for your position, all that kind of stuff. The academic piece, I kind of have it on both, right? So sometimes maybe you're interested in a school and maybe they're interested in you, but they don't have your academic program. Okay. Or there's some schools that are more focused over here on this academic piece and not so much over here. They don't have these type of programs, that kind of thing. That's not necessarily in your control if certain schools don't have the academics that you're looking for. Okay. Um, so your qualifiers, this is everything that is guiding your decision, all the things that you're looking for, all the boxes that you are trying to get checked as far as your college experience, coach, color of the school, as far as like red, green, purple, yellow. Like, do you not like purple? Do you not like yellow? Like that, all the things that you're trying to figure out. Do you not like certain mascots? That kind of stuff, right? So location, region, hot, cold, all the different things, student population. So everything that's guiding your decision, these are your qualifiers. You need to figure out what those things are, and need to be able to, in some ways, rank them. Because the ranking is going to change as you go through the process. Kind of like I said, things that you don't start out as being focused on, as you go through the process, you start to be more focused on certain things, and think things are more important than they were. Your list is going to grow and change, okay, as you go through the process, and that's fine. That's just kind of part of it. As you go visit a school, talk to a coach, you're gonna be like, I don't like this. I really like this. I didn't know I liked that, right? Had an athlete that she was going to school in California, 100%. We were looking at all these California schools. There was one school on the East Coast that she was like, I don't really want to go to school out there. I'm all California, all in on California. Well, she went and visited a few schools out in California and very quickly decided, I don't like it out here, right? Visited this other school on the East Coast and just fell in love with it. And so just things like that happen, right? Can you find this thing in another school? Okay. So if you are interested in if you're interested in Baylor, right? But maybe you don't jump high enough, maybe you're not tall enough, or you just don't have the skill set, blah, 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 whatever it is that is crossing Baylor off the list for you, okay, whatever reason that is, can you find the things that you wanted in Baylor? Can you find those things in another school? Okay. If you are looking for a private type school, university like Baylor, are there other private schools out there? Yes. You want to go to school like University of Florida because it's in Florida and the weather's great and all that kind of stuff. Okay. There's a ton of colleges out in Florida and in surrounding states that have beautiful campuses that are close to the beach, all that kind of fun stuff, right? So depending on what your qualifiers are, can you find those things in other schools? Okay, not even talking about crossing them off your list first, but just can you find them in another school? Knowing what you want is really important. Not every athlete is going to have that all figured out. Okay, so I encourage you guys to write things down, checklist, whatever, however you want to create your qualifiers, boxes, things that you're looking for in a school. Write that stuff down. Make notes on what you're looking for. There are over 1,000 athletes that are going to be in the portal at come Christmas time once season's over. And I don't want to say that every single one of those made a poor choice in what they wanted and it didn't match up in the school, because there's lots of variables, lots of circumstances. I totally understand that. But chances are a lot of them didn't have it figured out when they made the decision to go a certain school. And then when they got there, they didn't like the situation that they were in for whatever reason. Okay. But knowing what you want ahead of time and having some of that figured out can really, really help. Again, might not know everything, and that's totally fine too. What do you want to accomplish? What does after college look like for you? What does college as an athlete look like for you? Are you trying to be an All-American? Do you want to win a conference championship? What are the things that you want to accomplish through that college process, and knowing what you're getting into? Okay, all these things, qualifiers, box checking, knowing what you're getting into when you get there, I think is really important. One of my concepts in recruiting that I always tried to communicate with other coaches about was I wanted to know what I was getting from an athlete. Okay, exactly. Baseline, bottom line, I know I get A, B, and C. Okay. I talked to a lot of college coaches that are always like, well, we're hoping she can, change this and work on this technique and blah, blah, blah. And all that stuff is great. You can definitely get that. But I never recruited an athlete based on what I was hoping to get her to change or what I was hoping to get her to grow and improve and all that kind of stuff, right? Do I hope my athletes get better from when I recruited them as a junior in high school? Yes, 100%. And they probably will, right? They probably will get better, hopefully. But I wanted to know what were my never changing things about that athlete that I was going to get in them. And that's how I recruited the athletes that I recruited. So for you, what do you know about the school? What are the things that you know and that are going to be there and never change, okay, in your time at that specific school? Okay. Volleyball is like boxing. This is something that I said all the time as a college coach. Volleyball is a very physical sport, okay? You do not see, and maybe you see it now, I don't know, or you see it on for fun MMA matches. I don't know, I don't pay attention to any of that kind of stuff, but you don't throw a 250-pound boxer in the ring with a 100-pound boxer. You just don't, right? The physicality piece is just going to not match up, okay? And so I do want athletes and parents to think about this idea of physicality versus height. Height is an important part of the physicality, and it's definitely a piece of it, but it's not everything. Height is not everything. Okay. NCSA, you don't have to go look up the numbers, or you can, I guess, but they kind of have slotted like you got to be this tall if you're going to play this position at this level, and this tall in this position, blah, 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 whatever. And they're just wrong. And really, because for the most part, they treat it as a trickle down. The tallest kids play these positions here, and then they slowly get shorter as they work their way down. Go look at the roster of Metro State. They were number one Division II team in the country not that long ago. Or go look at a roster like Angelo State, or go look at WT's roster. They just won the Lone Star Conference this year, and go look at the size of athlete that they are recruiting. Okay. It is not a necessarily trickle down type of situation. Go look at some of the athletes that are on a roster at Pitt, or at who did I just watch? Georgia Tech. Okay, they're not all 6'3" kids. Okay, there are some. Georgia Tech has a 6'5" kid, but not every single athlete on that roster is 6'5", 6'3". Okay, they have some 5'11" athletes and stuff like that. So it's not. I don't like their metrics. Let's say that. Size does matter. Size is a big part of it. And that's why I don't want to say there's no truth to it. They are as a whole wrong, I would say. But size does help. Okay. Again, size and height are a part of the physicality. So size does matter. Okay. 30 seconds of highlights. So when you're sending film, college coaches are evaluating you in about 30 seconds. I can walk up to a court, or I can watch about 30 seconds of film and probably have a pretty good idea of whether or not you can play at my level, in my program, in my gym, in my conference. Okay, whether or not you're going to help me win, I can probably tell within about the first 30 seconds. But that's when the evaluation comes in. That's when college coaches are watching your film. That's why I talk about front loading the film so much, because you've got about 30 seconds to impress them. But in that first 30 seconds, I'm trying to find arm speed, vertical, foot speed, power. Can you score points at my level? Okay, that is the number one question that I'm trying to get answered from watching your film. Because as I was talking to a college coach this past weekend, scoring points is the only thing that matters in volleyball. It is. It's the only thing that matters. Scoring points and stopping the other team from scoring points. Okay, points are the only thing that matters in volleyball. There's some things that we just can't change, right? 5'9" is 5'9". 6'3" is 6'3". There's a difference. Okay. Sometimes we look at a school and we go, okay, maybe they're not as good as some other schools, and so we go, they'll take someone that's a little bit, shorter or undersized or whatever. And that's probably not true. It might be true in a certain situation. But if programs are lower in their conference, they are trying to match what the top of the conference is doing. And so they are trying to look for more physical athletes. Okay. I would get emails all the time when I took over a program that only won 2 conference games the year before we got there. And for that first year or so, I got so many emails that told me that this such and such an athlete could quote unquote my program. Okay. And it was usually some information after never watching us play, never being in my gym, or that kind of thing. Okay. But when we were 12th out of 13 teams in the conference, I got that email all the time. When we were 4th and 3rd in the conference, I never got that email, right? But there is a physicality piece to playing volleyball at the highest level. I want the most physical kids, the strongest arms, the best jumpers, the physical athletes, faster, right? All those things take into account as far as when we're trying to get better. Those are usually the things that we're trying to help us get better, right? So think of it kind of in these couple of ways. How much do you bench? What's your 40 time, right? And not necessarily those metrics. Coaches aren't asking athletes how much they bench, but it's similar to the difference between touching 10 feet and touching 9-10 is big. The difference between touching 9-6 and touching 9-4 is big at other levels, right? And so the difference of hitting the ball at 42 miles an hour and then hitting the ball at 45 miles an hour, or however hard they hit it, I don't even know, at the top levels, there's a difference there. Okay. Just like in academics, trying to do a really high academic school, the difference of getting a T and getting a 31 on the ACT is big. Okay. So the difference in what your 40 time might be compared to someone else, that kid's faster than you, right? If someone can bench 10, 15, 20 more pounds than you, that is just a little bit stronger than you. So there little things like that can make a difference. Okay. Something that I share whenever I can, this graphic, it was done by another volleyball coach in the country, and he was kind of he wanted to be able to rank one, Division 2, Division 3, and get an idea of, okay, where do they cross over? Basically was kind of his thought process in doing this. And so trying to look at, he started looking at, points earned, and that kind of thing. He settled on kills per set, as far as if you're getting more kills than other programs, then chances are you win. And the amount of kills that you're getting shows the physicality piece of your level of play. So we took averages, conference averages, kills per set across all the conferences and all the divisions, and this is what you get. Okay. So you've got Division 1 for sure, physicality level up above, and then you get 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, maybe as many as 10 conferences in, and the kills per set start matching up with Division 2. Okay. And this is one of those things where when parents say, oh, we're thinking low Division 1 or Division 2, and those things don't match up. Okay. It's not, you don't go 1 through 335 Division 1 and then start with the number 1 Division 2 school after that. That's not how it works. Okay. The top Division 2 schools in the country, they could probably be for sure the bottom half of Division 1. Okay. The top, right? Not every school in Division 2, again, as this shows, not every school in Division 2 is going to be better than every Division 1 school. Okay. But there is some crossover as far as talent level, physicality, that kind of stuff, right? So this is kind of I don't know, a silly story or whatever, but there was USC posted this video about how they had a quote unquote undersized outside hitter playing in the Pac-12, and they said undersized outside hitters couldn't play in the Pac-12, something like that. Okay. And she's obviously a really good athlete, really talented. They're talking her up a little bit, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, I wonder how tall is undersized. And so I went and looked. This athlete was 6'1". She was listed as 6'1". So I went, well, that would not necessarily be what I would call undersized in the Pac-12. Or in general, right? It wouldn't be undersized in general. So what I did was I looked at, I was intrigued by this notion, and so I looked at the top 50 kill leaders from the last season in the Pac-12. Okay, I pulled out, I think there were 29 of the 50 kill leaders were listed as outside hitters, And so I went, okay, so if 6'1" is undersized, let's take 6'1" and below, and we'll call them one group, and then we'll take 6'2" and above and call them another group. And what I found was there were 15 athletes in the Pac, 15 outside hitters in Pac-12 that were 6'1" and below. There were 14 athletes in the Pac-12 outside hitters that were listed 6'2" and above. And so what you have is you have a claim that undersized outside hitters, quote unquote, can't play in the Pac-12, or they said undersized outside hitters can't play in the Pac-12. But I don't know who's actually saying that, because there's actually more, quote unquote, undersized outsides in the Pac-12 than there are regular sized outside hitters in the Pac-12. Okay, so really, really interesting. But this is the kind of stuff when we start talking about like physicality versus height. There's a big difference. I was just watching Pitt and Georgia Tech the other night. They had Georgia Tech had a right side that's 5'11", listed as 5'11". Okay, and she was a beast, super aggressive, had a ton of kills. I don't want to say she was their best player, but she was really good. Okay, the physicality piece is crucial in figuring out where you fit in so many ways. Okay, this is one of the things that kind of has steered me towards this direction. Is the physicality piece. Height is a part of it, but it is not the entire story. Okay, foot speed, power, arm speed, how high you're jumping. Okay, those are all things that take into account. Okay. I do want to talk about outliers here. This is important because I think outliers are something that we get really fixated on, and we shouldn't. Okay, outliers are outliers for a reason. They're not the norm, right? And not necessarily saying that if you're 5'9", you can never play in the Power 5 or never be a whatever All-American. I don't, that kind of stuff. I mean, one of our best outside hitters at Division II, when I was an assistant coach, she was 5'7". Okay, and I think she was probably 5'7" in shoes, but she was really strong arm, really physical, super high intense energy type of athlete. Okay, and she scored a lot of points, always scored points, didn't matter who we were playing. But this was about a year ago, softball, NCAA tournament-ish time, and JMU was playing Oklahoma. Oklahoma was a big, I guess, favorite to win that year. I don't know, something like that. They were playing against JMU. JMU had a pitcher who was, I think, I don't remember specifically, but she wasn't 6 feet tall. She was like around 5'4", 5'5", maybe even as short as 5'7", which was not the norm, right? And she ended up pitching against Oklahoma in their first game and had won. And so it was a big deal. And everyone was posting all this stuff about, a lot of people said she was too small and she couldn't do it. And she did. And it's a great story. And she is for sure an outlier, and that's totally fine. And she's obviously a great athlete and a great pitcher. Okay. Oklahoma ended up, I think, beating her the next time that they played in like the second game, something like that. But they're outliers for a reason. Okay, we can't necessarily always get so fixated on focusing on the outliers. We have to get focused on what the norms. Okay, the physicality part is important because similarities don't equal the same. Okay, 5'10" is not the same across the board. Not every athlete that's 5'10" jumps the same height, hits the ball the same with the same velocity, has the most intensity, is the most coachable. Okay, all those kind of things. Similarities do not equal the same, right? Okay, recruiting is not a trickle down, right? This is a concept that kind of stems from recruiting in this, what happened with this 2023 class. So what I mean by trickle down is that a Division II coach, let's say, if I'm a Division II coach, and we can all contact athletes on June 15th, same as Division I. Okay, I'm a Division II coach. I can contact athletes on June 15th, just like Division I coaches can, right? So as a Division II coach, I don't sit here and wait for the Division I athletes to pick all of their kids, okay, to pick all their athletes, to recruit them, to get them committed. I'm not waiting, right? And I think a lot of families think that that's kind of how the process happens. Is they go, well, Division I recruits their kids first, and then like maybe the lower Division I, and then Division II, and then Division III is later, and it's just kind of this kind of constant, steady recruiting process. Okay, and it it's something different, right? As a Division II coach, if I'm a really, really good Division II program, even maybe not a great Division II program, it doesn't necessarily matter all the time. Sometimes that comes into play. But if I'm good at recruiting and I'm a Division II coach, June 15th comes around and I've got my kids targeted. Okay. I found and targeted athletes that are going to help us get better, found the athletes that I like, find the athletes that I want, found the petitions that I want. Okay. Those Division II schools, Division III schools, even to some extent, are targeting athletes early, right? Division I schools for sure, even not great Division I programs, they are targeting. If you are 0-15 in your conference the year before, in your bottom of your conference, you have athletes targeted right away. Okay, so it's not necessarily a trickle down to where you are letting all the schools above you pick athletes and then you get left over. That's not how that works, right? These athletes or these college coaches are like, hey, I can get her first. If I can get her to campus first and make that offer, then I've got a shot at getting an athlete, okay, specific athlete. And that's what really they're trying to do, okay? So why is understanding the trickle down piece important? You've got to start early. With like I said, with the way things are recruiting right now and the way things have been going, it's just going to speed up. And what we've done with the new recruiting rules, and you might not be familiar with how things have changed over the last couple of years, but with the way we have recruiting rules now, the timeline hasn't necessarily changed as far as when athletes commit. Okay, what we've done is we've just shortened the time frame that they have to go on visits, have communication with college coaches, and then make a decision. Okay, and that timeline hasn't really changed. We've just made the window really, really small. Have a big list. Okay, you've got to start with a big list. You've got to start with, okay, these are, I don't even want to say reach schools, but I've got like, here's my schools here, here's my next group of schools, and here's my next group of schools after that. Okay, have a big list and have a broad list. Okay, so don't just look at Division I schools. Look at Division II schools. Maybe look at some Division III schools that are going to fit what you're looking for academically. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to spend all of your time focused on 10 or 15 schools and then have June 15th come around and none of those schools call you or email you, and then where are you after that, right? Create a list that makes sense. And this is something that you need to ask somebody that question, okay? I asked, athletes, if you say athlete, you can play Division I, right? Or I want to play Division I, okay? Even if someone tells you that you can play Division I, well, where, right? The difference between the University of Texas or whoever's number one right now, I think it was Louisville, is number one right now in the country RPI wise, and then the bottom of Division I RPI wise, sitting at 334, 335, whatever that school is. There's a huge difference between the level of play, physicality, size, however we want to talk about it, ball speed. There's a huge difference and a huge gap between that top school and the bottom school of Division I. Okay, a huge gap. So if you say, well, yeah, you can play Division I, where on that list? Because that makes a huge difference. Where on that list, where you sit. Okay, because if realistically you're in that bottom quarter potentially, maybe there's some Division II schools where you would be a better fit at. You might have a better experience at, right? But create a list that makes sense. So have somebody that you can ask questions to about the recruiting process and find out a little bit more where you actually and realistically fit. There was something else that I was going to say about that, and it just went on my mind. Time wasted is opportunity wasted. Okay, so if I spend all this time sending 50, 75, 100 emails to a Baylor and a Texas and an LSU and a Clemson and a Texas Tech, I spend all that time emailing those schools and none of them respond back. Okay, we're wasting opportunities, we're wasting time, and we need to be focused on where we actually are going to be have a really, really good fit. Okay, so that's that. Hopefully that what was helpful and makes sense to you guys. I would encourage you to ask the people around you, have questions. Oh, I remember going back here, creating a list that makes sense. Go watch them play. Go watch these teams play and compete that you want to go to school to. You want to go play volleyball at Tech, go watch Tech volleyball game. Right? You want to go to TCU, watch TCU play Texas. And then figure out if you are in fact actually a good fit for those programs. Okay. Questions, comments, please let me know. My website, which obviously you found, my email, my phone number. Okay. And that is that. Let me stop sharing and then get back to where I can see me. There I am. So hopefully that was beneficial to you guys. Thank you for being on. It was still longer than I wanted it to be, even though I feel like I made it shorter. But hopefully that gets you guys started, focused on a certain direction. If you need a little bit more help as far as where you should be going, please reach out to me and let me know. I'd be glad to help kind of walk you through that process and getting your list started and figuring out where you fit. So make sure to check out my blog every week. I've got blog posts coming out each and every week for you guys. So please stay on top of that. Lots of good information to kind of help you all with the recruiting process and talk everything volleyball.